The buzzing of my phone jolted me awake. I fumbled in the darkness, squinting at the bright screen. 3 missed calls from my mother. A text. "Alex, please call me when you get this." It was 4:37 a.m. My stomach knotted instantly. Nobody calls at this hour with good news. I sat up in bed, my studio apartment barely visible in the pale blue light filtering through the blinds. The rain tapped gently against my window. Typical Portland winter. I hesitated, thumb hovering over the call button. Something inside me wanted to pretend I'd never seen the message, to sink back into the warmth of my blankets and deal with whatever crisis this was after a few more hours of sleep. But I knew better. In the Chen family, ignored calls only escalated into bigger problems. "Mom?" My voice was rough with sleep. "Is everything okay?" The silence on the other end lasted just a beat too long. "Alex, honey, your father and I need to talk to you. Can you come by the house this weekend?" That's when I knew. Something was very wrong. I glanced at my desk where my laptop sat closed, containing the audio files I'd been collecting for months. The recordings I'd never thought I'd need to use. My parents had no idea that their whispered late-night conversations about money had been carefully documented, safely encrypted, and backed up in 3 different places. "I'll be there Saturday," I said finally. "Perfect. And Alex?" Her voice softened in that way it always did when she was about to deliver a blow wrapped in silk. "Try to come with an open mind, okay? Family has to stick together." As I ended the call, I walked to my window, pushing aside the curtain to look at the pre-dawn city. The lights of downtown Portland glimmered in the distance through the misty rain. 3 years of working part-time through college, of saving every penny, of planning my graduate school future. I had a sinking feeling it was all about to unravel. But they had no idea what I knew, and they certainly had no idea what I was capable of doing about it. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The drive to my parents' house in West Lynn took 40 minutes, in Saturday morning traffic. Each mile ratcheted my anxiety higher. I'd grown up in that pristine suburban home with its manicured lawn and carefully cultivated rose garden, my mother's pride and joy. But over the last few years, I'd felt increasingly like a visitor rather than a daughter returning home. I parked my beat-up Honda Civic beside my father's gleaming Tesla and my mother's Range Rover. The contrast wasn't lost on me. While they lived in luxury, I counted pennies and worked extra shifts at the tech startup that barely paid enough to cover my rent and tuition. Alex, finally. My mother, Diana, opened the door before I could knock. She wore her usual weekend attire, designer jeans and a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Her dark hair was swept into a perfect low bun, not a strand out of place. She pulled me into a hug that smelled of expensive perfume. "Come in. Come in. Your father's in his study." I followed her through the house, noting the new artwork in the entryway, the fresh flowers on the console table. Money was clearly not tight in the Chen household, despite what my recordings suggested. My father, Richard, barely looked up from his computer when we entered. "Alexandra, have a seat." I sat in one of the leather chairs facing his massive desk. My mother perched on the arm of his chair, their united front firmly established. "How's school?" he asked, finally closing his laptop. "Fine. I'm on track to graduate in May." I kept my voice neutral, though my pulse was racing. "What's going on?" My parents exchanged a glance. My mother nodded slightly, their silent communication system as effective as ever. "We wanted to discuss your graduate school plans," my father began. "Your mother and I have been talking and we think—" "Richard, just tell her," my mother interrupted. "Alex is an adult." My father sighed, adjusting his glasses. "We've had to make some financial decisions that will affect your future plans. Your college fund, the one we set aside for your undergraduate and graduate education. We've had to reallocate it." The room seemed to tilt slightly. Even though I'd suspected this was coming, hearing the words spoken aloud made my stomach drop. "Reallocate," I repeated. "What does that mean exactly?" "Olivia got accepted to Stanford," my mother said, a note of pride unmistakable in her voice. "The tuition is substantial and with room and board in California." She trailed off, waving her hand as if the astronomical costs were merely an inconvenience. I stared at them, waiting for more. When neither spoke, I broke the silence. "So you gave my college fund to Olivia?" "It's not that simple," my father said, his tone slipping into the patronizing register he used when explaining adult concepts. "Your sister has a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Stanford's business program is the best in the country, and you're almost done with your degree while she's just starting. The money will go further for her." "I'm almost done with my bachelor's," I clarified. "The fund was supposed to cover my graduate degree, too. That was always the plan." My mother reached across the desk, her manicured fingers stopping just short of touching my hand. "Plans change, sweetheart. You've always been the practical one. Olivia needs this chance. You're already so independent. You have that job at the tech company. You'll figure something out." I felt a surge of anger so intense it made my vision blur at the edges. They were framing this as a compliment. I was so capable, so independent, so practical that I didn't need their support. Meanwhile, my sister, who had barely managed a 3.0 GPA in high school but excelled at charm and social climbing, deserved their full financial backing. "How much is left?" I asked, my voice unnaturally calm. Another glance between them. "Nothing," my father said. "Stanford's costs are considerable. And Olivia needs a suitable apartment, not some dormitory. Plus living expenses in Palo Alto." "I see." I reached for my phone, feeling its weight in my pocket where the recording app was already running, capturing every word. "And when were you planning to tell me about this?" "We're telling you now," my father said, his voice hardening. "Look, I understand you're disappointed." "Disappointed?" I cut him off. "You just took away my future without even consulting me. That money was promised to me. I've been working and planning around it for years." "Don't be dramatic," my mother sighed. "It's not your future, it's just money. You can take out loans like other students." "The money you already promised." "Me," I reminded them. "The money I factored into every decision I've made since high school." My father leaned forward. "Alexandra, family means making sacrifices. Your sister needs this opportunity more than you do. You're already established, you have connections at your job, and frankly, you've always been more." He paused, searching for the right word. Resilient. Resilient. The word hit me like a slap. What they meant was, Olivia is fragile. Olivia needs coddling. Olivia can't handle disappointment. While I was expected to simply absorb this devastating blow because I'd proven I could survive their neglect before. "Where is Olivia now?" I asked. "Shopping for her apartment furnishings in California." My mother beamed. "She's so excited." We didn't want to burden her with these financial details. Of course not. Why trouble the golden child with the reality that her opportunity came at her sister's expense? I stood up, gathering my bag. "I need to go." "Alex?" My mother's voice sharpened. "Don't make this difficult. It's done. The accounts have been emptied and transferred to Olivia's name already." I paused at the door, turning back to look at them. My father had already reopened his laptop, the conversation clearly finished in his mind. My mother was checking her watch, probably calculating if she had time for her yoga class. "How much was in the account?" I asked. "Exactly?" My father glanced up, annoyed at having to re-engage. $127,136.42, he said. "Not that it matters now." I nodded, committing the number to memory. "You're right about one thing. I said, my hand on the doorknob. I am resilient, more than you know. The drive back to my apartment was a blur. I didn't remember the traffic, the turns, or parking. I only came back to myself when I was sitting at my desk, my laptop open, the audio file from that morning's conversation already uploaded and saved alongside the dozens of others I'd collected over the past 6 months. It had started as a precaution. I'd overheard my parents discussing financial reorganization last summer. My father's voice hushed, but clear as he talked about prioritizing Olivia's needs. Something in his tone had set off alarm bells. So I'd downloaded a recording app before my next visit home and left my phone casually on the coffee table while I helped my mother in the kitchen. That evening, listening to the playback, I discovered my instincts were right. Alexandra has that scholarship and her job, my father had said. She'll be fine if we need to divert some of her fund to Olivia. Some had apparently become all in the months since. I opened my spreadsheet where I'd been tracking my finances. Without the promised graduate school fund, my carefully constructed future crumbled. I'd need approximately $80,000 for the program I'd been planning to attend. My savings, even with my aggressive penny pinching, amounted to just under $18,000. The reality hit me in waves. I would have to defer my graduate plans. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Take on massive loans, work full-time while studying, all because my parents decided my sister's education was worth more than mine. My phone buzzed with a text. It was from my cousin Tyler. Hey, how'd it go with Uncle Richard and Aunt Diana? They dropped the bomb yet? My fingers hovered over the screen. Tyler had warned me months ago that something was brewing. His parents, my father's sister and her husband, had overheard discussions at a family dinner about redistributing assets toward Olivia's education. They gave my entire grad school fund to Olivia, I typed back. All $127K of it. 3 dots appeared immediately. Holy shit, what are you going to do? I stared at the question for a long moment. What was I going to do? Roll over and accept it? Take out crippling loans? Beg my parents to reconsider? Or something else entirely? I opened my recording app again, scrolling through the files. My mother's voice from 3 months ago. Richard, are you sure this is legal? The money was specifically designated for Alexandra's education. My father's dismissive response. It's in our names. We can do whatever we want with it. Besides, no one needs to know the details. Another recording from 2 months ago. Once it's done, Alexandra will have to accept it. She might be angry for a while, but she's practical. She'll adjust. And finally, from just a few weeks ago, the conversation that had made my blood run cold. We should liquidate her account before she graduates. Move it all to Olivia's name. If we wait, Alexandra might start asking questions about accessing it for grad school. I had questions, all right. But I wasn't just going to ask them. I was going to demand answers, armed with evidence they never imagined I possessed. I'm going to get my money back, I replied to Tyler. Every last cent. How? Came his immediate response. I looked at my laptop screen, at the folder of recordings labeled simply insurance. Then at the business card pinned to my bulletin board. Elaine Wu, attorney at law. She was a family friend who had always taken a special interest in my education, encouraging me when my parents were too busy with Olivia's drama. I have a plan, I wrote back, and they'll never see it coming. I reached for my phone and stopped the recording from my parents' house. Adding it to my collection, I felt a strange calm settle over me. The initial shock and hurt were receding, replaced by something colder and more focused. My entire life I'd been the good daughter, reliable, independent, uncomplaining. I'd stayed quiet when they missed my high school graduation for Olivia's dance recital. I'd nodded understanding when they canceled our planned college tours because Olivia had broken up with her boyfriend and needed consoling. But this, taking my future and handing it to my sister without even the courtesy of a discussion, this was different. This wasn't just disappointing. It was betrayal. I scrolled through my contacts until I found Elaine's number. My finger hovered over it for just a moment before I pressed call. "Alex? What a lovely surprise," Elaine's warm voice answered. "Hi, Elaine. I need some legal advice," I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "It's about education funds and parental obligations. Do you have time to meet?" There was a brief pause. "Of course. Is everything okay?" I looked at my screen, at the waveforms of my parents' voices plotting to steal my future. "No," I said honestly, "but it will be." As I hung up, I felt something shift inside me. The dutiful daughter who accepted whatever scraps of attention and support her parents deigned to give was gone. In her place stood someone new, someone who understood that sometimes justice had to be taken, not asked for. My phone buzzed again with a text from my mother. "Don't mention any of this to Olivia when she calls. No need to worry her." I almost laughed. Even now, protecting Olivia's feelings was their priority. I didn't bother responding. Instead, I began preparing for my meeting with Elaine, organizing my recordings chronologically, transcribing key sections, and creating a document that laid out the timeline of my parents' betrayal. Outside, the Portland rain intensified, drumming against my window. I made myself a cup of coffee and settled in for a long night of work. The practical, resilient daughter they thought they knew was about to show them exactly what those qualities really meant. And somewhere in California, my sister was shopping for furniture with money that had been promised to me, blissfully unaware of the storm gathering on the horizon, a storm with my name on it. The coffee shop was busier than I expected for a Tuesday afternoon. I chose a corner table, positioning myself with my back to the wall so I could see both the entrance and the rest of the room. Old habits. Growing up as the forgotten daughter had taught me to always be aware of my surroundings, to anticipate problems before they materialized. Elaine Wu arrived exactly on time, dressed in a charcoal gray suit that somehow looked both professional and comfortable. Her dark hair was cut in a sleek bob that framed her face perfectly, and she carried a leather messenger bag that looked well-loved but expensive. She spotted me immediately, raising her hand in a small wave as she navigated through the maze of tables. "Alex," she said warmly, sliding into the seat across from me. "It's been too long." I managed a smile. "Thanks for meeting me on such short notice." "Of course." She placed her bag on the empty chair beside her and folded her hands on the table. "Your message sounded urgent." I took a deep breath. "It is. I need to know my legal options regarding an education fund my parents established for me, but recently gave to my sister instead." If Elaine was surprised, she didn't show it. Her expression remained calm, professional. "I see. And how much money are we talking about?" $127,836.42, I said, the exact figure burned into my memory. Now her eyebrows rose slightly. "That's a significant sum. Was this fund formally designated for your education specifically?" "Yes, since I was 12. I pulled out my laptop. "And I have proof." Elaine's eyes widened as I explained about the recordings. I played the first one for her, a conversation from last Christmas when my parents had discussed Alex's college fund and how it would cover her graduate degree just like we promised. "You've been recording your parents without their knowledge?" Elaine asked, her voice careful, non-judgmental. "For the past 6 months, ever since I overheard them discussing moving money from my account to Olivia's." I met her gaze steadily. "I know it sounds paranoid, but I had a feeling something was wrong. Turns out I was right." Elaine sipped her coffee, considering. Oregon is a one-party consent state for recordings, so you haven't broken any laws by recording conversations you're a part of. But some of these sound like you weren't present? I nodded. Most were recorded when I left my phone in rooms where they were talking. I'd go help with dishes or get something from my car and let the app run. That's more complicated legally, Elaine said. Those recordings likely wouldn't be admissible in court. But the ones where you were present during the conversation could be. I don't necessarily want to go to court, I clarified. I just want my money back. The money they promised me and I've been planning my future around. Elaine tapped her fingers thoughtfully on the table. Was the fund in your name or theirs? Theirs. My shoulders slumped slightly. It was a 529 plan they set up. I'm the beneficiary. Or I was until they changed it to Olivia. That complicates things, she admitted. Legally, the account holder has the right to change beneficiaries. But, she held up a finger, there might be other angles here. Verbal contracts, promissory estoppel. Essentially, you relied on their promise to your detriment. I leaned forward. What does that mean in practical terms? It means we have options. Elaine pulled a legal pad from her bag and began taking notes. Tell me everything. When the account was established, any specific promises made about its use, how you've planned your education around this money. For the next hour, I laid out the entire history, starting with my parents' long-standing promise that my education would be fully funded through graduate school. I showed Elaine my meticulous financial spreadsheets, the graduate program acceptance, letter I'd received, but hadn't yet responded to, and the recordings that documented my parents' calculated betrayal. When I finished, Elaine sat back, her expression thoughtful but concerned. Alex, you've built a compelling case, but I want you to consider something before we proceed. Legal action against your parents will almost certainly destroy your relationship with them. Are you prepared for that? I didn't hesitate. They destroyed our relationship when they stole my future to give to my sister. I've spent my entire life being the resilient one, the one who didn't need attention or support because I could handle things on my own. I'm done accepting scraps. Elaine nodded slowly. All right, here's what I suggest. Before we take any formal legal steps, I'll draft a demand letter outlining the situation and requesting the funds be restored to you. Sometimes, just the shock of receiving a legal notice is enough to prompt resolution. And if that doesn't work, then we explore more aggressive options. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were kind. But Alex, I want you to be certain. This path will be difficult, emotionally as well as practically. I thought about all the times I'd swallowed my hurt when my parents prioritized Olivia, the missed performances, the forgotten achievements, the constant message that my sister's needs were simply more important than mine. I thought about how I'd worked part-time jobs since high school to build my own emergency fund, somehow sensing even then that I couldn't fully rely on my parents. I'm certain, I said finally. They made their choice. Now I'm making mine. Elaine reached across the table and squeezed my hand briefly. Then let's get started. That evening, alone in my apartment, I drafted an email to the graduate program requesting a deferral. Without my fund, there was no way I could start in the fall as planned. The email felt like admitting defeat, but I reminded myself it was just a temporary setback. This was not the end of my story. My phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. OMG Alex, just found the perfect couch for my apartment. $3,200, but Mom and Dad said go for it. Can't wait for you to visit me at Stanford. Attached was a photo of a sleek modern sectional in creamy white leather. I stared at it, trying to process that my sister had just spent more on a couch than I had in my checking account. Using my money, I started to type several responses, deleting each one. What could I say? That couch cost a month of grad school? Enjoy sitting on my stolen future? Did Mom and Dad mention they're paying for your luxury apartment with money they promised me? In the end, I simply wrote, Looks nice. 3 dots appeared immediately. That's it? Looks nice? What's wrong? Typical Olivia, always demanding emotional labor even via text. My thumb hovered over the screen. Part of me wanted to unload everything, to make her uncomfortable for once in her pampered life. But the strategic part of my brain, the part that had been recording my parents' conversations for months, knew better. The element of surprise was my only advantage. Just busy with finals, I replied. Apartment looks great. It wasn't Olivia's fault, not really. She'd never been told that her opportunity came at my expense. Our parents had carefully shielded her from that reality, just as they'd always shielded her from any form of discomfort or disappointment. In their eyes, Olivia was fragile, precious, in need of protection, while I was resilient, self-sufficient, capable of absorbing unlimited disappointment without breaking. Well, they were right about one thing. I was resilient. But they were about to discover that resilience could be weaponized. My phone rang again. Tyler. Hey, I answered, grateful for the distraction. So, did you meet with Elaine? What's the plan? I filled him in on our consultation, the demand letter strategy, and the potential legal options if that failed. Tyler whistled low. Damn, Alex, you're really doing this. They left me no choice. I know. I'm not criticizing. I'm impressed. He paused. Uncle Richard is going to lose his mind when he gets that letter. The thought gave me a small, grim satisfaction. My father prided himself on his reputation, his control, his perfect family image. A legal threat would shatter that illusion, forcing him to confront the reality of what he'd done. Have you told Uncle Nathan yet? Tyler asked, referring to my father's brother. I hesitated. Uncle Nathan had always been different from my father. Warmer, more attentive, less obsessed with status and appearances. He'd been the one who remembered my birthdays when my parents were focused on Olivia's latest crisis. The one who'd attended my high school graduation when my parents had to rush Olivia to urgent care for what turned out to be a mild sunburn. Not yet, I admitted. I'm not sure how he'll react. Are you kidding? He'll be on your side. He's always saying Uncle Richard plays favorites. Tyler's voice lowered. Look, I wasn't going to tell you this yet, but Uncle Nathan called my dad last week, ranting about how Richard and Diana were planning to use your college fund for Olivia. He was furious. My heart skipped. He knew? Why didn't he warn me? He thought they were just talking about it, not that they'd actually done it. Dad said he was trying to talk them out of it. I closed my eyes, processing this new information. Uncle Nathan had tried to intervene on my behalf without my even knowing it. The thought brought unexpected tears to my eyes. You should call him, Tyler urged. He's always had your back. I will, I promised. But first, I need to make sure all my evidence is organized and backed up. Once that demand letter hits, things are going to get messy. After hanging up with Tyler, I spent the rest of the evening meticulously organizing my files. Each recording was labeled with the date, location, and key quotes. I created a timeline of my parents' discussions about redistributing my fund, highlighting the moments where they explicitly acknowledged it was meant for my education. I backed everything up to 3 separate cloud services and an external hard drive. It was nearly midnight when I finally closed my laptop. My eyes burned from staring at the screen for hours, but my mind was too wired for sleep. I made a cup of tea and stood by my window, looking out at the rain-slicked streets of Portland. For the first time since that morning at my parents' house, I allowed myself to feel the full weight of their betrayal. It wasn't just about the money, though. 127,836. 42 was a life-changing amount. It was about what the money represented. The broken promise, the casual disposal of my future, the clear message that Olivia's needs would always matter more than mine. I let the hurt wash over me, acknowledging it without letting it overwhelm me. Because beneath the pain was something stronger, something that had been building for years. Resolve. I would not be erased. I would not be dismissed. I would not quietly accept that my future mattered less than my sister's. My phone chimed with an email notification. It was from Elaine, sent at 11:57 p.m. The subject line read, "Draft Demand Letter. Review ASAP." I opened it immediately. Elaine's legal language was precise and devastating. "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Chen, this letter serves as formal notice that my client, Alexandra Chen, is seeking immediate restitution in the amount of $127,836.42, representing funds promised and designated for her education, which were improperly reallocated to her sister, Olivia Chen, without consent or consideration. Ms. Chen has substantial documentation, including recorded conversations, written communications, and witness statements confirming that these funds were explicitly promised for her educational expenses through graduate school. Her reasonable reliance on these promises has resulted in significant financial and educational planning decisions, which now place her at considerable disadvantage due to your actions. While my client prefers to resolve this matter amicably, she is prepared to pursue all available legal remedies, including but not limited to claims of breach of verbal contract, promissory estoppel, and unjust enrichment, should a satisfactory resolution not be reached within 10 business days. The letter continued, outlining specific instances where my parents had confirmed the fund's purpose and my reliance on it. Reading Elaine's clinical description of what had happened, stripped of emotion and presented as the breach of trust, it felt vindicating in a way I hadn't expected. I replied immediately, "The letter looks perfect. Please proceed." Elaine's response came just minutes later. "Are you absolutely certain you want to move forward? Once this is sent, there's no turning back." I thought about my deferral request to the graduate program, about Olivia's $3,200 couch, about my father's dismissive "it's done," and my mother's condescending, "You'll figure something out." "I'm certain," I wrote back. "Send it." The next morning, I woke to a text from Elaine. "Letter delivered electronically to both your parents at 8 a.m. with hard copies to follow via certified mail." I checked the time, 8:17 a.m. My parents would have received Elaine's email 17 minutes ago. I imagined them reading it, my father's face darkening with anger, my mother's eyes widening in shock. They would be calling each other by now, panic rising as they realized I wasn't going to quietly accept their decision. I got out of bed, made coffee, and prepared for the storm. My phone remained silent, but I knew it wouldn't last. They would try to contact me, first with anger, then manipulation, finally desperation. I needed to be ready for all of it. At 9:23 a.m., my father called. I let it go to voicemail. At 9:24 a.m., my mother called. Voicemail again. At 9:26 a.m., my father texted, "Alexandra, call me immediately. This is completely unacceptable." At 9:28 a.m., my mother, "Alex, please talk to us. I don't understand why you've involved a lawyer. We're family." I screenshotted both messages but didn't respond. Let them sit with their discomfort. Let them feel a fraction of the powerlessness I'd felt when they casually informed me they'd given away my future. My phone rang again at 9:40 a.m., Uncle Nathan. I hesitated, then answered. "Alex," he said without preamble, "your dad just called me absolutely livid. Says you're suing them? What's going on?" I took a deep breath. They took my entire college fund, the one they've been promising me since I was 12, and gave it to Olivia for Stanford, without warning, without discussion. I found out Saturday. Uncle Nathan was quiet for a moment, then exhaled sharply. "I knew they were considering moving some money, but the entire fund? Jesus, Alex. I'm so sorry." "Did you try to stop them?" I asked. thinking of what Tyler had told me. I did, he admitted. I told Richard it was unfair to you that they'd made a commitment. He said it was a family decision and to stay out of it. He paused. I should have warned you directly. I just never thought they'd actually go through with it. Well, they did. And now I'm fighting back. With recordings? Nathan asked, surprising me. Your dad mentioned something about illegal recordings. Not illegal, I corrected. Oregon is a one-party consent state. The recordings where I was present are completely legal. And the others? I hesitated. Those are my insurance. I don't plan to use them in court, just to make sure my parents understand I have receipts for everything they've said. Nathan was quiet for a moment. Alex, I want you to know I'm on your side here. What they did was wrong, but litigation takes time, money, and will absolutely destroy your relationship with them. They destroyed it first, I said simply. I understand. But before you go nuclear, would you consider letting me try to mediate? Maybe I can get through to Richard in a way your lawyer can't. I considered his offer. Uncle Nathan had always been fair, and he clearly understood the injustice of the situation. Having an ally within the family could be valuable. You can try, I conceded, but I'm not backing down, and I'm not accepting anything less than full restitution. Fair enough, he said. I'll talk to Richard today, and Alex, I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself. His words brought unexpected tears to my eyes. Thanks, Uncle Nathan. After we hung up, I forwarded the voicemails and text messages from my parents to Elaine, then sent her an update about Nathan's intervention attempt. Her response was cautiously supportive. It's good to have family backing, but don't place too much hope in mediation. Your parents' initial reaction, anger rather than concern or remorse, suggests they're not in a conciliatory mindset. Yet, we'll proceed as planned unless you instruct otherwise. Throughout the day, the messages from my parents continued, evolving exactly as I'd predicted. My father's moved from anger. This is outrageous and you know it. To threats. You'll regret taking this legal route, Alexandra. To attempts at authority. Call me now and we'll discuss how to fix the mess you've created. My mother's followed a different but equally predictable pattern. Shock. I can't believe you would do this to the family. Guilt. Do you know how much this is hurting your father? And finally, emotional manipulation. Olivia is in tears. Is that what you wanted? To hurt your sister? I documented each message without responding. Let them exhaust their usual tactics. Let them realize that this time, I wouldn't be managed or manipulated. By evening, a new type of message started coming through, from extended family members. Apparently, my parents had begun calling relatives, spreading their version of events. My phone filled with texts from confused aunts and cousins. Alex, your mom says you're suing them? What's going on? Is everything okay? Your dad sounds really upset. Why are you recording your parents? That seems extreme. I drafted a single response and sent it to everyone who reached out. I appreciate your concern. This is a private matter between my parents and me regarding funds that were promised for my education and then given to Olivia instead. I'm pursuing legal channels to resolve it fairly. I won't be discussing details further at this time. Only my grandmother, my father's mother, received a different message. She had texted a simple, "Call me, Alexandra." I respected Grandma Lynn too much to send her a form response. I called her immediately. "Grandmother," I said when she answered. In our family, we always addressed her formally. "Thank you for reaching out." "Your father is very angry," she said without preamble, her voice calm. At 82, my grandmother had survived the Cultural Revolution, immigration to America with 2 small children, and the early death of my grandfather. Nothing fazed her. "I know," I replied. "Good. He should be angry. With himself." Her words surprised me. Richard has always favored Olivia. It was wrong when you were children. It is wrong now. I swallowed hard. You understand why I'm doing this? Of course. Her voice was matter of fact. In China, education is sacred, a promise. To fund education is not broken lightly. What your parents did was dishonorable. Tears welled in my eyes. Thank you for understanding. Understanding is not enough, she continued. I have called your father and told him he must make this. Right. I told him that until he returns your money, he will not be welcome in my home. I gasped. My grandmother's weekly Sunday dinners were the cornerstone of our family gatherings. Excluding my father would send shockwaves through the entire family. Grandmother, you don't have to. It is done, she interrupted firmly. Alexandra, you have always been the child who honored family. You worked hard, you stayed respectful, you never complained. But respect goes both ways. Your parents have not respected you, and now they must face the consequences. I was speechless. Never in my wildest planning had I imagined my grandmother would become such a powerful ally. Thank you, I managed finally. Come to dinner on Sunday, she said. We will talk more then. After we hung up, I sat on my couch in stunned silence. The family dynamics I'd assumed were fixed and immutable were shifting dramatically. My parents' decision to take my fund hadn't just damaged their relationship with me, it was creating ripples throughout the entire family system. My phone buzzed with another text. Olivia. Alex, what's going on? Mom is crying and Dad won't. Stop yelling about lawyers. What did you do? I stared at the message, considering how to respond. Olivia truly didn't know that her Stanford dream was being built on the ruins of mine. Our parents had protected her from that knowledge, just as they'd always protected her from anything unpleasant or challenging. Our parents gave you my college fund, I typed finally. The money that was promised for my graduate school. That's what's happening. 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times before her response came through. What? No, they're paying for Stanford from their savings. They wouldn't take your money. Ask them, I replied simply. Ask them directly where your Stanford money came from. The dots appeared and disappeared again. Finally, this doesn't make sense. Why wouldn't they tell me? Because they knew it was wrong, I wrote back. And they knew you would be upset if you understood what they were doing. A long pause then. I'm calling them right now. I set my phone down, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had carried me through the day was fading, leaving me drained. But beneath the fatigue was a core of determination that remained unshaken. For the first time in my life, I wasn't accepting my parents' decisions as inevitable or final. I was fighting back, and I wasn't fighting alone. My laptop chimed with an email notification. It was from the graduate program. Dear Ms. Chen, we have received your request for deferral due to unexpected financial circumstances. While we typically require deferral requests earlier in the admissions cycle, we understand that financial situations can change suddenly. Given your strong application and the specific nature of your request, the admissions committee has agreed to grant you a 1-year deferral, with your place in the program guaranteed for the following fall semester. Additionally, I would like to schedule a meeting to discuss potential funding options, including departmental scholarships and research assistantships that might help offset the loss of your expected financing. I read the email twice, relief washing over me. At least this part of my plan was working. I wouldn't lose my spot in the program, and the mention of potential funding offered a glimmer of hope. It wouldn't replace the stolen 127,836. 42, but it was something. My phone rang again. Olivia. I hesitated, then answered. Is it true? She demanded, her voice thick with tears. Did they really take your money for my tuition? Yes, I said simply. Why didn't they tell me? Why didn't you tell me when I was texting you about the apartment and furniture? Her voice cracked. Alex, I never would have accepted if I'd known. I closed my eyes. I know, Olivia. That's why they didn't tell you. They made the decision and didn't give either of us a choice. I'm so sorry, she whispered. What? What are you going to do? I've already done it, I said. I've demanded they return the money. Through a lawyer. A lawyer, she gasped. Alex, that's so extreme. Can't we just talk this out as a family? Her response was so predictably Olivia that I almost laughed. In her world, everything could be resolved with a heartfelt conversation, with emotions and tears and ultimately, forgiveness. She had never had to fight for anything in her life. I tried talking to them, I explained patiently. They made it clear the decision was final. The money is gone, transferred to accounts in your name. This isn't something we can fix with a family meeting. But it's all so ugly now, she sniffled. Mom's hysterical and Dad's threatening to cut you off completely and Grandma Lynn is involved and… Olivia, I interrupted firmly. This was always ugly. It was ugly when they stole my future to give to you. The only difference is now it's visible. She was quiet for a moment. What can I do? She asked finally, her voice small. It was the first time in our relationship that Olivia had ever asked how she could help me, rather than assuming I would solve her problems. The role reversal was so unexpected that it took me a moment to respond. Tell the truth, I said eventually. If anyone in the family asks, tell them exactly what happened. Don't let Mom and Dad spin this as me being jealous or unreasonable. Make sure everyone knows you didn't know about this either. Okay, she agreed quietly. I can do that. She paused. Alex, I really am sorry. I know, I said, and I meant it. Olivia wasn't the villain in this story. She was just another player in my parents' manipulative game. Privileged, yes, but also a pawn in her own way. After we hung up, I sent an update to Elaine, including the news that my grandmother and now Olivia were supporting my position. Her response was immediate and encouraging. Family support is crucial. Your grandmother's stance especially will apply significant social pressure. We should capitalize on this momentum. I suggest we request a formal meeting with your parents and their attorney, if they retain one, to discuss settlement options. The sooner we can move this toward resolution, the better for all involved. I agreed to the meeting strategy, and Elaine promised to send a formal invitation the following morning. As I prepared for bed that night, I realized that in just 2 days, the power dynamic with my parents had shifted dramatically. They had always been the ones making unilateral decisions, secure in the knowledge that I would adapt without complaint. Now they were scrambling to respond to my actions, off balance and defensive. For the first time, I was the one setting the terms, the one making demands, the one they couldn't ignore or dismiss. My recorder app sat open on my phone, ready for whatever came next. Because if there was one thing I'd learned from my parents, it was to always be prepared. And this time, I was playing to win. The conference room at Elaine's law firm was deliberately intimidating. All polished mahogany and leather chairs, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Portland. I sat beside Elaine, back straight, hands folded on the table, the picture of composure despite the storm of emotions churning inside me. Across from us were 2 empty chairs, waiting for my parents. Remember? Elaine murmured, arranging a stack of documents with practiced precision. Let me do most of the talking. If they try to address you directly about emotional matters, redirect them to me. This is a legal negotiation, not a family therapy session. I nodded, glancing at my watch. 9:58 a.m. My parents were always punctual, a virtue they had instilled in me with rigid consistency. The thought almost made me smile. How many of their lessons was I using against them now? At exactly 10 a.m., the receptionist's voice came through the intercom. "Ms. Wu, the Chens have arrived." "Send them in," Elaine replied. The door opened and my parents walked in. My father first, Richard Chen, immaculate as always in a tailored suit, his expression a careful mask of professional detachment. Behind him, my mother, Diana Chen, her usual polished appearance slightly frayed at the edges. Her eyes were puffy behind designer frames, her lipstick a shade too bright against her pale face. They stopped abruptly when they saw me. Perhaps they had expected to meet only with Elaine, to handle this inconvenient problem without having to face their daughter directly. "Alexandra," my father said, his voice clipped. "Mr. and Mrs. Chen," Elaine intervened smoothly, rising to her feet. "Thank you for coming. Please, have a seat." My mother's eyes never left my face as they sat down. "Alex, honey, this isn't necessary. We could have talked at home." "Mrs. Chen," Elaine cut in before I could respond. "As my letter explained, this is now a legal matter. Alexandra has retained me to represent her interests. All communication regarding the disputed funds should go through me." My father's jaw tightened. "I see my daughter has chosen to turn a family discussion into a lawsuit." "Not yet," Elaine corrected. "Currently, we're seeking an amicable resolution through negotiation. Whether this escalates to litigation is entirely dependent on your willingness to address the wrongful appropriation of funds promised to Alexandra." "Wrongful appropriation?" My father's voice rose slightly. "That money was in our names. We had every legal right to—" "Richard," my mother interrupted, placing a hand on his arm. She turned to me, her expression softening into the persuasive smile she used when trying to manage difficult situations. "Alex, sweetheart, I know you're upset, but surely you understand that family resources sometimes need to be reallocated based on changing circumstances." I met her gaze steadily. "What circumstances changed exactly? The graduate program I've been working toward for 4 years? The future you promised to support? Or just your priorities?" My father leaned forward. "Watch your tone, Alexandra. We've supported you your entire life. One financial adjustment doesn't erase everything we've done for you." Elaine cleared her throat. "Let's focus on the matter at hand. My client was the designated beneficiary of an education fund worth 127,036.42. This fund was repeatedly promised to her for completion of her education through graduate school. Based on these promises, she made significant life and career planning decisions." She slid a document across the table. "This is a transcript of conversations confirming these promises, with dates and times. As you can see, as recently as December, you both explicitly confirmed the fund would cover Alexandra's graduate education." My parents exchanged glances. My father reached for the document, scanning it with narrowed eyes. "These are private conversations," he said finally, "recorded without our knowledge or consent." "Oregon is a one-party consent state," Elaine replied smoothly. "Any conversation Alexandra was part of was legally recorded. But let's not get sidetracked by how we know what we know. The question is, do you deny making these statements? Do you deny promising Alexandra these funds?" My mother sighed dramatically. "Of course we wanted to support both our daughter's education. But circumstances change. Olivia received an unexpected opportunity." "Stanford was unexpected?" I interjected, unable to hold back. "She's been talking about applying there since sophomore year." "Alexandra," Elaine cautioned quietly. I took a deep breath, recomposing myself. This was exactly what Elaine had warned against, getting pulled into the emotional undertow. My father set the transcript down. "What exactly are you hoping to accomplish here? The money has been transferred. Olivia has started at Stanford. Apartment leases have been signed, tuition paid. It's done. Nothing is done until we reach a resolution, Elaine countered. My client is seeking full restitution of the promised funds, $127,836. 42. How you arrange to provide that restitution is your concern, but it must be addressed. That's absurd, my father scoffed. We don't have that kind of money just sitting around. It took years to save that fund. Then a payment plan may be arranged, Elaine suggested. With appropriate interest, of course. My mother's composure finally cracked. This is ridiculous. Alex, we're your parents. We've given you everything. And now you're treating us like criminals because we decided to help your sister? No, I said quietly, meeting her gaze. I'm treating you like people who broke a promise. Who took something that was meant for me and gave it to someone else without even discussing it. With me first. Who dismissed my future as less important than Olivia's. That's not true, my mother protested. We just thought... You thought I could figure it out, I finished for her. Because I'm resilient, right? Because I've always managed on my own while you focused on Olivia? Tell me, if the situation were reversed, if you had promised Olivia a fund and then given it to me instead, would you have expected her to just accept it and move on? The question hung in the air. My parents exchanged glances, and in that silent communication, I saw the truth they would never admit aloud. Of course not. Olivia would have been consoled, compensated, coddled. Her tears would have been intolerable to them. Her future would have been protected at all costs. My father straightened his tie, a tell he had when regrouping. Alexandra, I understand you're upset, but taking legal action against your own parents is extreme and, frankly, ungrateful. Mr. Chen, Elaine interjected, characterizing my client's pursuit of what was promised to her as ungrateful, is neither productive nor relevant to resolving this matter. I'm merely pointing out that family relationships should factor into these discussions, he countered. Alexandra has chosen the nuclear option rather than working within the family to find a solution. I couldn't stay silent. What family solution did you offer me, Dad? When exactly were you planning to discuss how I would pay for graduate school now? Or did you just assume I'd give up on that dream? Of course not, my mother said quickly. We were going to help you apply for loans, scholarships, things I could have done anyway if the money was never promised to me in the first place, I pointed out. The difference is, I would have been planning for that reality for years, not blindsided at the last minute. My father's expression hardened. This conversation is going in circles. What do you actually want, Alexandra? To punish us? To hurt Olivia? Because if we're forced to come up with this money immediately, that's exactly what will happen. Your sister will have to leave Stanford. The manipulation was so transparent it almost made me laugh. He was trying to make me responsible for Olivia's future, to transfer his guilt onto my shoulders. That's not my problem, I said evenly. You created this situation, not me. You chose to make promises you didn't intend to keep. You chose to prioritize one daughter over the other. Those were your decisions, and now you're facing the consequences. My mother's eyes filled with tears. How can you say that, after everything we've done for you? Mrs. Chen, Elaine intervened again, appeals to family loyalty aren't relevant here. The issue is straightforward. Funds were promised, plans were made based on those promises, and now those funds have been diverted elsewhere without consent. She slid another document across the table. This is our proposed resolution. Full restitution of the $127,836, 42, either as a lump sum or according to a structured payment plan with 6% interest, beginning within 30 days. My father didn't even glance at the document. And if we refuse? Then we proceed to litigation, Elaine said simply. We'll file suit for breach of verbal contract, promissory estoppel, and unjust enrichment. We'll depose family members who have heard you discuss Alexandra's education fund over the years. We'll subpoena your financial records to trace exactly how and when the funds were diverted. She paused. And of course, all of this will become public record. The color drained from my father's face. Public record. The two words that would terrify a man whose reputation in the community meant everything to him. You would do that to your own family? He asked, turning to me. You left me no choice, I replied. You took my future without a second thought. Did you really expect me to just accept it? My mother reached across the table, her manicured fingers stopping just short of mine. Alex, please. We made a mistake. We should have discussed it with you first. But taking this to court will destroy this family. The family was damaged the moment you decided one daughter's education mattered more than the other's, I said. I'm just refusing to pretend otherwise. My father stood abruptly. We need time to consider our options. Elaine nodded. Of course. You have 7 days to provide a response to our proposal. 7 days? My father scoffed. To come up with over $100,000? To begin the process, Elaine clarified. As I mentioned, a payment plan is acceptable. But we need your commitment within 7 days, or we'll proceed with filing. My father looked down at me, really looked at me, perhaps for the first time in years. There was something new in his expression, not just anger or frustration, but surprise, maybe even a grudging respect. You've certainly prepared thoroughly, he said. I suppose that shouldn't surprise me. You've always been meticulous. It wasn't an apology or even an acknowledgement of wrongdoing, but it was an admission that I had outmaneuvered him, at least temporarily. From my father, that was significant. Yes, I agreed simply. I have. My mother stood as well, her hand clutching her designer purse like a lifeline. Alex, will you at least come to dinner on Sunday? At Grandma Lynn's? We could talk more then, as a family. I glanced at Elaine, who gave a slight nod. I'll be at Grandma's on Sunday, I confirmed. But I won't be discussing this matter without my attorney present. My mother's face crumpled, but she said nothing more. My father placed his hand on her lower back, guiding her toward the door. At the threshold, he paused, looking back at me. This isn't who we raised you to be, Alexandra. I met his gaze steadily. You're right. You raised me to be silent, to accept whatever scraps of attention and support you offered, to never complain when Olivia got the lion's share of everything. I had to teach myself to demand fairness. The door closed behind them with a soft click, leaving Elaine and me alone. In the sudden silence, I exhaled slowly, only now realizing how tense my body had been throughout the confrontation. You did well, Elaine said, gathering her papers, especially considering the emotional complexity. Thank you. I rubbed my temples, feeling the beginning of a tension headache. Do you think they'll agree to the payment plan? Hard to say, Elaine admitted. Your father's concern about their public image works in our favor. They don't want this to become common knowledge in their social circles. But they also don't want to disrupt Olivia's Stanford experience, I pointed out. True. However, they have options they haven't considered yet. Home equity loans, retirement borrowing, family loans. She gave me a sidelong glance. Your grandmother's intervention may prove crucial. Has she said anything else since your last conversation? Only that she expects me at dinner on Sunday, I said. And that my parents won't be welcome until this is resolved. Elaine raised her eyebrows. That's significant leverage. Don't underestimate the power of family pressure, especially from an elder in a Chinese-American family. I nodded, gathering my things. The confrontation had drained me completely, leaving me feeling hollow and exhausted. despite the strategic victory. There was no joy in seeing my parents cornered, only a grim satisfaction that for once, they couldn't dismiss or ignore me. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now we wait," Elaine said. "They'll discuss, they'll strategize, they'll consult their own attorney if they're wise, and they'll come to realize that fighting this will cost more, financially and socially, than resolving it." I hoped she was right. Because despite the confidence I'd projected in that conference room, the truth was that taking this all the way to court would be emotionally devastating for everyone involved. I wanted justice, not destruction. As I left the law firm, my phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. "How did the meeting go? Are you okay?" The concern in her message was so unexpected that I found myself pausing on the sidewalk, unsure how to respond. Olivia had never been the one checking on me before. Our relationship had always been defined by my role as the responsible older sister and her position as the fragile younger one who needed protection. It went as well as could be expected. I typed finally. Mom cried, Dad threatened, the usual. 3 dots appeared immediately. "I'm sorry, this is all my fault." I frowned at the screen. "It's not your fault. You didn't know. But I'm the one benefiting from it. I'm at Stanford because they stole from you." I sighed, leaning against the building as pedestrians streamed past. "Olivia, listen to me. This isn't about you. It's about Mom and Dad making a unilateral decision that affected my future without even discussing it with me. You're caught in the middle, but you didn't create this situation." There was a long pause before her response came through. "I told them I want to transfer, that I won't stay at Stanford knowing how it was paid for." I stared at the message in shock. Olivia giving up her dream school? The sister who had gotten everything she ever wanted her entire life was now willing to sacrifice the biggest opportunity she'd ever received? "You don't have to do that," I wrote quickly. "That's not what I'm asking for." "I know, but it's the right thing to do. I can't enjoy being here knowing it came at your expense." I felt a sudden and unexpected rush of emotion, pride in my sister's moral stance, mixed with a complicated tangle of other feelings I couldn't quite name. "Let's talk more before you make any decisions," I suggested. "This isn't about punishing you." "Okay, but I mean it, Alex. I'm not okay with what they did either." I slipped my phone back into my pocket, feeling strangely unmoored. Everything was changing so rapidly. Family dynamics shifting, alliances reforming, my own role transforming from the compliant daughter to the one demanding accountability. By the time I reached my apartment, I was emotionally and physically exhausted. I dropped my bag by the door and collapsed onto the couch, staring blankly at the ceiling. The confrontation played on repeat in my mind. My father's dismissive tone, my mother's tears, the moment they realized I wouldn't back down. My phone rang. Tyler. "Hey," I answered, too tired to muster much enthusiasm. "How'd it go?" he asked eagerly. "Did Uncle Richard's head explode?" "Not quite," I said. "But it wasn't pretty. They're shocked I'm actually fighting back." "Of course they are. You've never stood up to them before." His words stung, even though they were true. "I never had to," I pointed out. "They've never done anything this blatant before." "No, they just consistently prioritized Olivia over you in 1,000 small ways that added up over time," Tyler said bluntly. "This is just the first time it came with a specific dollar amount attached." I was silent, absorbing the truth of his assessment. He wasn't wrong. My entire childhood had been shaped by a subtle but constant message. Olivia's needs came first. Olivia was delicate, sensitive, required special handling. I was sturdy, capable, didn't need as much attention. "Anyway," Tyler continued, filling the silence, "my dad talked to Uncle Nathan. He's planning to call your parents tonight. Said he's going to knock some sense into Richard's thick skull." I smiled despite myself. Uncle Nathan had always been the only person who could truly stand up to my father. As brothers, they had a complex relationship fraught with old rivalries and resentments, but there was also a bond there that couldn't be easily broken. "I appreciate his support," I said. "Between him and Grandma Lynn, maybe they'll actually listen." "Speaking of Grandma, are you really going to dinner on Sunday? Won't that be super awkward?" "Probably, but Grandma specifically asked me to come." I paused. "Olivia says she's going to transfer schools." "What? No way!" Tyler sounded genuinely shocked. "Stanford's been her dream forever. She says she can't enjoy it knowing where the money came from." Tyler whistled low. "Wow, maybe there's hope for her after all." I found myself feeling oddly defensive of my sister. "She didn't know, Ty. She's not the villain here." I know. I'm just surprised she's actually willing to give something up. That's new." It was new, and it suggested a depth to Olivia I hadn't given her credit for. Perhaps I'd been unfair, seeing her only as the spoiled favorite rather than as someone who was also shaped by our parents' dysfunctional dynamics. After hanging up with Tyler, I forced myself to eat something, then spent the evening updating my financial spreadsheets and researching additional scholarship opportunities. The graduate program's offer to discuss funding options had given me a small ray of hope, but I knew better than to count on external assistance. If my confrontation with my parents failed, I needed backup plans. My phone buzzed again around 9 p.m. Uncle Nathan. "Just got off the phone with your father," he said when I answered. "Thought you might want an update." I sat up straighter. "How did it go?" "About as well as you'd expect. He's furious, defensive, and absolutely blindsided that you're fighting back." There was a hint of satisfaction in Nathan's voice. "I told him he made his bed, and now he has to lie in it." "What did he say?" "A lot of the usual Richard justifications. That he knows what's best for the family, that you're being unreasonable, that Olivia needed the opportunity more." Nathan sighed. "But toward the end, I think reality started sinking in, especially when I mentioned that I'd spoken to Lynn, and she's not backing down either." "Did he say anything about how they'll respond to the demand letter?" "Not directly, but he did ask if I thought you would actually go through with a lawsuit." Nathan paused. "I told him you absolutely would. That unlike Olivia, when you set your mind to something, you follow through." The implicit comparison warmed me. Uncle Nathan had always seen me clearly, had recognized my determination and grit when my parents saw only compliance. "Thank you," I said quietly. "Don't thank me yet. Richard is stubborn, and Diana will follow his lead. This isn't over." He hesitated. "Are you prepared for this to get uglier before it gets better?" "I have to be," I replied. "I can't back down now." "Good, because neither can they, not without admitting they were wrong." His voice softened slightly. "Get some rest, Alex. Sunday will be intense." After we hung up, I sat in the darkness of my apartment, thinking about what lay ahead. The confrontation at Elaine's office had been difficult, but at least it had happened on neutral territory with professional boundaries. Sunday dinner at Grandma Lynn's would be different. The conflict would play out in the heart of our family space, with the complicated emotions and history that entailed. My phone buzzed with an email notification. It was from my father, sent to both me and Elaine. "Alexandra and Ms. Wu, after consideration, I propose we meet to discuss a potential resolution to this matter. Diana and I would like to present an alternative solution that addresses Alexandra's concerns while minimizing disruption to both daughters' educational plans. We suggest meeting at our home tomorrow at 7 p.m. in a family setting rather than a legal one. Ms. Wu is welcome to attend if Alexandra feels this is necessary. Regards, Richard Chen." I forwarded the email to Elaine with a simple question. "Thoughts?" Her response came quickly. Interesting development. They want home court. Advantage, and to frame this as a family matter again. I strongly recommend I attend with you. Also, note that he mentions an alternative solution. Be prepared for them to offer less than full restitution. How do you want to proceed? I considered my options. Meeting at their house would inevitably shift the power dynamic back in their favor. I'd be the daughter again, not the wronged party seeking justice. On the other hand, refusing to meet would make me appear unreasonable and unwilling to compromise. Let's meet them, I decided, but not at their house. Can we use your office again? Tomorrow at 7 works for me. Absolutely, Elaine replied. I'll respond and set it up. Sleep didn't come easily that night. I tossed and turned, my mind racing with possible scenarios for tomorrow's meeting. What alternative solution were my parents planning to offer? Would they try to offer a smaller amount? Ask me to wait until Olivia graduated? Suggest some non-monetary compensation? Whatever it was, I needed to stay firm. This wasn't just about the money anymore, though 127,136. 42 was certainly life-changing. It was about establishing that I wouldn't be dismissed or devalued. That promises made to me mattered. That my future was just as important as my sister's. Morning brought a text from Olivia. Mom and Dad asked me to join the meeting tonight. Should I come? I stared at the message, blindsided. My parents were bringing Olivia into the negotiation? What game were they playing? Did they say why they want you there? I asked. Something about a family solution. Dad said, since it affects both of us should be present. I felt a flash of anger. This was clearly a tactical move, using Olivia's presence to emotionally manipulate me. They knew I'd be less likely to hold firm with my sister sitting there, potentially caught in the crossfire. It's up to you, I wrote back after careful consideration. But you should. No, they're probably hoping your presence will make me more likely to accept whatever compromise they're offering. 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times before her response. I won't let them use me against you. If I come, it's to support you, not them. I blinked at the screen, surprised again by this new, assertive Olivia. Okay. Then yes. I think you should come. But be prepared. It might get uncomfortable. I know, but I want to be there. When I reported this development to Elaine, she was thoughtful. This could work in our favor. If Olivia truly supports your position, having her present might actually pressure your parents toward a more equitable solution. Or they could be planning to use her to guilt me into accepting less, I pointed out. Possibly. But remember, you hold the stronger position here. They're the ones who acted improperly. Stay focused on that fact, regardless of who's in the room. As the day progressed, I felt my anxiety mounting. By the time I arrived at Elaine's office that evening, I was a bundle of nerves disguised beneath a carefully constructed facade of confidence. Elaine met me in the lobby. You ready for this? I nodded. As ready as I'll ever be. Remember, don't let them reframe this as you being unreasonable or hurting the family. They created this situation. You're simply seeking what was promised. To you. We took the elevator to her floor in silence. When the doors opened, I saw my parents and Olivia already waiting in the reception area. My sister stood slightly apart from our parents, her expression tense. When she saw me, she offered a small, encouraging smile. Let's proceed to the conference room, Elaine suggested, leading the way. Once again, we took our positions across the table from one another, Elaine and me on one side, my parents on the other. Olivia hesitated, then deliberately took a seat beside me rather than our parents. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. My mother's lips tightened into a thin line, while my father's expression darkened. Thank you all for coming, Elaine began, smoothly. Mr. and Mrs. Chen, you mentioned an alternative solution you'd like to propose? My father cleared his throat, straightening his tie. That nervous tell again. Yes. After careful consideration and discussion with Olivia, we've come up with a compromise that we believe addresses everyone's concerns. He glanced at my sister, who stared back impassively. Clearly, whatever he was about to propose didn't have her enthusiastic endorsement. We're proposing a split of the educational expenses, he continued. We'll establish a new fund for Alexandra in the amount of $65,000 drawn from our home equity line of credit. The remaining amount needed for Olivia's education will stay as planned. That's roughly half of what was promised to Alexandra, Elaine pointed out. It's what we can realistically manage without disrupting Olivia's education completely, my mother interjected. We're trying to be fair to both our daughters. I felt a surge of anger. Fair would have been consulting me before taking my money in the first place, I said, keeping my voice level. Fair would have been giving me time to make alternative plans if you couldn't fulfill your promise. My father's jaw tightened. We're trying to make this right, Alexandra, but we have obligations to both our children. The obligation to me came first, I pointed out. You made a commitment to fund my education, then you broke that commitment without warning. Now you're offering to partially fulfill it and calling that a compromise? It's the best we can do, my mother insisted. Tears welling in her eyes again. We don't have an extra $120,000 just sitting around. Yet you had it for Olivia, I noted. Because we'd been saving it for years, my father snapped. For you. And then we repurposed it. Dad, Olivia spoke up. Suddenly, her voice quiet but firm. That's not fair and you know it. You took Alex's money, all of it, without asking her, without even telling her until she cornered you about it. The shock on my parents' faces might have been comical in any other context. They stared at Olivia as if she'd suddenly started speaking in tongues. Olivia, honey, my mother began, her voice softening automatically. We understand you feel caught in the middle. I'm not caught in the middle, Olivia interrupted. I'm stating facts. Alex trusted you, and you betrayed that trust. And now, you're offering to return half of what you took and acting like she should be grateful. My father's face flushed. Young lady, this doesn't concern... It absolutely concerns me. Olivia cut him off again. You used me as the excuse to take Alex's future. You made me complicit in your betrayal without my knowledge or consent. So yes, this very much concerns me. The room fell silent. I stared at my sister in amazement. Never, in our entire lives, had I heard her speak to our parents that way. Olivia had always been the peacemaker, the pleaser, the one who avoided conflict at all costs. This new, assertive version of my sister was a revelation. Elaine seized the moment. Mr. and Mrs. Chen, while we appreciate that you're making an effort toward resolution, $65,000 is insufficient. My client was promised the full amount, and that's what we're seeking. My father leaned forward, his expression hardening. And, as I've explained, that would require us to pull Olivia out of Stanford. Is that what you want, Alexandra? To punish your sister for our decision? Before I could respond, Olivia spoke again. Stop it, Dad. Stop trying to use me to manipulate Alex. She turned to me. I've already applied for transfers to schools I can afford with scholarships and loans. I'm not staying at Stanford. Not like this. My mother gasped. Olivia, we've discussed this. No, you talked and expected me to listen, but I've made my decision. Olivia's voice was steady now, determined. I won't be the reason Alex loses her future. That's not who I am, even if you think it's who I should be. I felt a sudden, unexpected swell of emotion, pride in my sister's integrity, gratitude for her support, and a deep sadness that it had come to this. Olivia, I said quietly, I never wanted this to affect your education. She gave me a small, sad smile. I know, but I can't accept what they did either. She turned back to our parents. You need to make this right. All of it. My father's face had gone from flushed to ashen. He looked suddenly older, defeated in a way I'd never seen before. My mother was openly crying now, no longer trying to use her tears strategically. If we return the full amount, my father said after a long moment, his voice uncharacteristically subdued, we'll need time. We'd have to take out additional loans, possibly restructure our mortgage. We're open to a payment plan, Elaine confirmed, with appropriate interest and legally binding terms. My father nodded slowly. I'll need to speak with our financial advisor and bank to see what's possible. Of course, Elaine said. We can schedule another meeting once you've gathered that information. But I should note that we'll need a substantial good faith initial payment as part of any agreement. How substantial? My father asked warily. At least 25% of the total amount, Elaine replied, within 30 days. My father looked like he might argue, but then his eyes flicked to Olivia, still sitting firmly by my side, and he simply nodded. We'll make it work. Then I think we have the outline of a path forward, Elaine said, gathering her papers. I'll draft a preliminary agreement for your review, including the payment schedule and terms. As the meeting concluded, an uncomfortable silence fell over the room. My parents stood awkwardly, clearly uncertain how to proceed. In normal circumstances, there would have been hugs, reassurances, the usual family parting rituals, but nothing about this was normal anymore. We'll see. You both on Sunday? My mother finally ventured. At Grandma's? I'll be there, I confirmed. Me too, Olivia added. I'm flying back tomorrow. My mother looked like she wanted to say more, but my father placed his hand on her arm, guiding her toward the door. We'll be in touch once we've spoken with the bank, he said stiffly. After they left, Olivia turned to me, her eyes bright with unshed tears. I'm so sorry, Alex. I had no idea. I know, I said, reaching out to squeeze her hand. It's not your fault. Elaine discreetly excused herself, giving us some privacy. I should have known, though, Olivia continued. All those years they always gave me everything I wanted while you worked for everything you had. I just thought, I don't know what I thought, that you preferred it that way, that you were naturally more independent. It's so obvious now how unfair it all was. I sighed, the weight of years of unspoken resentment finally lifting slightly. It wasn't your responsibility to see it, Liv. We were both just playing the roles they assigned us. Well, I'm done with my role, she said, firmly. Golden child, fragile flower, whatever they think I am, I'm making my own decisions now. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw someone I barely recognized. Someone stronger, more principled, more mature than I'd given her credit for. What schools are you applying to? I asked. OSU, University of Oregon, Portland State. Places where in-state tuition and my existing scholarships will actually cover most costs. She shrugged. Stanford was never really about the education anyway. It was about the prestige. Mom and Dad's dream more than mine. The admission shocked me. Really? You've talked about Stanford since you were 15. Because it made them happy. She smiled ruefully. You weren't the only one playing a part, Alex. You got to be the responsible one. I got to be the one who fulfilled their social climbing ambitions. I didn't know what to say. All these years, I'd resented Olivia for being the favorite. Never. Considering that her role might have been its own kind of cage. Anyway, she continued, gathering her purse, I should go. My flight's early tomorrow, and I still need to pack. I helped Olivia into her Uber, still processing our conversation. As the car pulled away, she waved through the window, offering a small smile that seemed both apologetic and resolute. I stood on the sidewalk long after her car disappeared. Around the corner, the evening air cool against my face, trying to reconcile this new version of my sister with the one I'd known my entire life. Elaine emerged from the building, briefcase in hand. "Are you all right?" she asked, studying my expression. "I'm not sure," I admitted. "Everything is changing so fast. Family dynamics have a way of remaining frozen for years, then shifting dramatically when someone finally disrupts the pattern." She gave me a thoughtful look. "You did that, Alex. By refusing to accept the role they assigned you, you've forced everyone to reconsider their own parts in this story. I never expected Olivia to stand up to them like that," I said, "or to give up Stanford. People can surprise you when given the chance." Elaine checked her watch. "I should get going, but I wanted to say I'm impressed with how you handled yourself today. You stayed focused on the issue without getting pulled into emotional manipulation. Thanks to your coaching," I said with a small smile. "No," she shook her head. "That was all you. Most clients in family disputes can't maintain that kind of clarity and boundary setting." She patted my shoulder. "I'll draft the agreement tomorrow and send it over for your review before sharing it with your parents." As I walked to my car, I felt oddly disconnected from myself, as if watching my life unfold from a distance. 3 weeks ago, I had been a normal graduate student with normal family problems, parents who played favorites, a sister who got more than her share of attention and resources. Now, I was in the middle of a legal negotiation with those same parents, with my sister unexpectedly becoming my strongest ally. When I got home, I found an email waiting from the graduate program coordinator. "Dear Alexandra, following up on our previous correspondence, I'd like to meet to discuss potential funding options for your deferred enrollment. Our department has several research assistantships that will be available next fall, which could significantly offset your tuition costs. Additionally, I've spoken with the dean about your situation, and she has expressed interest in considering you for a special departmental scholarship. While this wouldn't cover all expenses, combined with an assistantship, it could make your graduate education financially feasible. Would you be available to meet via Zoom next week to discuss these possibilities in more detail?" I stared at the screen, feeling a flicker of hope. Even if the legal battle with my parents dragged on, even if they managed to delay full restitution, I might still find a way forward. The thought brought unexpected tears to my eyes, not of frustration or anger this time, but relief. My future wasn't entirely in my parents' hands anymore. I replied immediately, scheduling a Zoom meeting for Monday afternoon. Then I updated my financial spreadsheets, calculating how much I could realistically save between now and next fall, how much the assistantship might cover, what loans I might need to take out even with partial scholarships. The numbers were daunting but not impossible. I could make this work, with or without my parents' cooperation. My phone rang. Tyler again. "Just got off the phone with Olivia," he said without preamble. "Holy shit, Alex. She's transferring? She actually stood up to Uncle Richard?" "I know," I said, still processing it myself. I barely recognized her. She said Aunt Diana was crying, and Uncle Richard looked like someone had punched him in the stomach. Tyler sounded almost gleeful. "Man, I wish I could have seen that." "It wasn't fun, Ty," I said quietly. "They're still our parents." He sobered immediately. "I know. Sorry. It's just, they've gotten away with this favoritism for so long, it's kind of satisfying to see them finally face consequences." I understood his perspective. As cousins, who'd grown up together, Tyler had witnessed the imbalance in my family firsthand, the way my parents doted on Olivia while expecting me to fend for myself. He'd been pointing it out since we were teenagers, long before I was ready to acknowledge it myself. "Anyway," he continued, "Dad talked to Uncle Nathan again. Apparently the parents are in full panic mode. They're meeting with their financial advisor tomorrow morning." "Good," I said. Maybe they'll finally realize I'm serious about getting the full amount back. Oh, they definitely know you're serious, especially after Olivia's defection. He paused. Are you really going to Grandma's on Sunday? The tension is going to be off the charts. I have to. Grandma specifically asked me to come, and she's been my strongest supporter through all of this. Want backup? I could tag along? I smiled at the offer. Thanks, but I think this is something I need to handle on my own. Besides, Olivia will be there. She's flying back tomorrow. Olivia as your ally. Tyler sounded bemused. Never thought I'd see the day. After we hung up, I spent some time updating Elaine on the graduate program's funding options. Her response was encouraging. This is excellent news. It strengthens our position by demonstrating that you have alternatives. You're not solely dependent on your parents' cooperation. It also reinforces the legitimacy of your education plans, which they've tried to minimize. We should mention these developments in our next meeting. I was about to close my laptop when a notification popped up, an email from my father. The subject line simply read, "Proposal." With a mixture of trepidation and curiosity, I opened it. Alexandra, after consultation with our financial advisor, we are prepared to offer the following. 1. An immediate payment of $35,000 from our home equity line of credit. 2. Monthly payments of $2,500 for 36 months, totaling an additional $90,000. 3. A final balloon payment of $2,836, $42 at the conclusion of the payment period. This would constitute full restitution of the $127,136, though spread over 3 years to make it financially feasible for us. Before you respond, I ask that you consider the significant effort this represents. We are essentially taking a second mortgage on our home to fulfill this obligation. This is not an action we take lightly, but we recognize the importance of keeping our promise to you. Please discuss this proposal with Ms. Wu and let us know if these terms are acceptable. Regards, Dad. I read the email twice, noting the shift in tone from our previous interactions. Gone was the defensive posturing, the subtle blame shifting, the implication that I was being unreasonable. Instead, there was a straightforward acknowledgement of the obligation and a concrete plan to address it. Just as notable was the signature, Dad, rather than the formal Richard he'd used in previous communications. It was a small thing, but it suggested a shift in his thinking, a return to familial rather than adversarial framing. I forwarded the email to Elaine with a quick note. Thoughts? This looks like full restitution to me, just spread out over time. Her response came within minutes. This is a substantial improvement over their initial offer. The terms are reasonable, particularly the significant upfront payment. I would suggest we negotiate a modest interest rate on the monthly payments to account for inflation and opportunity cost. But otherwise, this appears to be a good faith offer worth considering. I sat back, feeling a complex mixture of emotions. Relief that my parents were finally taking my demands seriously. Satisfaction that my stand had resulted in concrete action. But also lingering hurt that it had taken legal pressure and family intervention to make them acknowledge the wrong they'd done. I didn't respond to my father's email immediately. Instead, I took a long shower, letting the hot water wash away some of the tension I'd been carrying. By the time I emerged, wrapped in my most comfortable pajamas with a cup of tea in hand, I felt ready to craft my response. Dad, thank you for the proposal. After discussing it with Elaine, I believe this offers a workable framework for resolution. We would like to suggest the addition of a 3% interest rate on the monthly payments to account for inflation and the opportunity cost of not having these funds available for my immediate educational expenses. Assuming this modification is acceptable, Elaine will draw up a formal agreement for both parties to sign, with the initial payment to be made within 7 days of execution. Regarding Sunday dinner at Grandma's, I will be there, as will Olivia. I hope we can interact civilly, focusing on family rather than our ongoing legal matter. Alex. I hesitated before sending it, second-guessing my tone, my demands, my willingness to compromise. Was I giving in too easily? Should I push for a larger initial payment, a shorter time frame? But then I reminded myself of my ultimate goal: to secure the funds I needed for graduate school and to establish that promises made to me mattered. My father's proposal, with the addition of interest, would accomplish that. I didn't need to extract maximum pain or concessions. I just needed justice. I hit send, then turned off my phone. Whatever response came through could wait until morning. For now, I needed rest. Needed to process the seismic shifts that had occurred in my family over the past few days. Sleep came surprisingly easily, deeper and more restful than I'd experienced since this ordeal began. Perhaps it was the knowledge that resolution was finally in sight, or simply exhaustion catching up with me after days of high-stress confrontation. I woke to sunlight streaming through my windows and the muted ping of notifications on my silenced phone. 4 new messages, all from family members. The first was from my father, sent late last night. The interest rate is acceptable. I've instructed our attorney to work with Ms. Wu on the agreement. We look forward to seeing you Sunday. The second was from my mother, sent early this morning. Alex, I hope we can begin to heal as a family now. I've missed you. Looking forward to Sunday. The third was from Olivia. Just landed. Taking an Uber to Mom and Dad's. They told me about the agreement. Thank you for being willing to compromise. See you Sunday. And the final message from Grandma Lynn. You have restored balance to the family, Alexandra. I am proud of you. Dinner at 4. Come early to help me prepare. I smiled at my grandmother's directness. As always, she cut straight to the heart of things. This wasn't just about money. It was about rebalancing a family dynamic that had been askew for decades. By standing firm, I had forced a reckoning that was long overdue. The rest of Friday and Saturday passed in a blur of mundane activities that felt strangely precious after days of emotional turbulence. I cleaned my apartment, did laundry, grocery shopped, worked on research for one of my final papers, and met a friend for coffee. Normal life continuing alongside the extraordinary drama playing out with my family. Elaine sent over the draft agreement on Saturday afternoon. Settlement agreement and release. This settlement agreement and release, the agreement, is entered into by and between Alexandra Chen, Alex, and Richard and Diana Chen, parents, collectively referred to as the parties, whereas parents established an education fund for Alex's undergraduate and graduate education, whereas parents subsequently reallocated said fund in the amount of $127,836. 42 to Olivia Chen without Alex's knowledge or consent, whereas Alex has made claim to the full amount of said fund, whereas the parties desire to resolve all disputes between them without further legal action. Now, therefore, in consideration of the mutual promises contained herein, the parties agree as follows. 1. Payment terms. Parents agree to pay Alex the total sum of $127,136.42 plus 3% interest on all payments except the initial payment, according to the following schedule. A. Initial payment of $35,000, 0 within 7 days of execution of this agreement. B. Monthly payments of $2,500, 0 plus applicable interest, for 36 consecutive months beginning on the first day of the month following the initial payment. C. Final payment of $2,136.42 plus applicable interest on the 37th month following the initial payment. 2. Method of payment. All payments shall be made by direct deposit to Alex's designated bank account. 3. Default. In the event parents fail to make any payment within 15 days of its due date, the entire unpaid balance shall become immediately due and payable, and Alex shall be entitled to pursue all legal remedies available. 4. Release. Upon full performance of parents' obligations under this agreement, Alex releases and forever discharges parents from any and all claims related to the education fund. 5. Confidentiality. The parties agree to keep the terms of this agreement confidential, except as required for tax or legal purposes or as necessary to enforce the agreement. 6. Entire agreement. This agreement constitutes the entire understanding between the parties concerning the subject matter hereof and supersedes all prior agreements or understandings. 7. Governing law. This agreement shall be governed by the laws of the state of Oregon. 8. Binding effect. This agreement shall be binding upon and inure to the benefit of the parties and their respective heirs, executors, administrators, successors, and assigns. In witness whereof, the parties have executed this agreement as of the date last written, below. The document was clinical, stripped of emotion, reducing the complex family drama to a series of legal obligations and remedies. And yet, seeing it in black and white brought a sense of validation I hadn't anticipated. My claim was legitimate. My hurt was recognized. My future was being restored. I replied to Elaine with my approval and a few minor wording suggestions, then turned my attention to the more immediate challenge: dinner at Grandma Lynn's tomorrow. What would I say to my parents? How would I interact with them now that our relationship had been fundamentally altered? Could we ever return to normal family dynamics? Or was that impossible after what had happened? These questions circled in my mind as I drove to Vancouver on Sunday afternoon, crossing the Columbia River into Washington, where my grandmother had lived since my grandfather's death a decade ago. Her modest ranch-style home sat on a quiet street, lined with towering Douglas firs, a stark contrast to my parents' manicured West Lynn estate. Grandma Lynn was waiting at the door when I arrived, her small frame straight as ever despite her 82 years, her silver hair pulled back in its customary neat bun. "Alexandra," she said, nodding her approval as I approached. "You are early. Good." No hugs, no effusive greetings. That wasn't my grandmother's way. Her love was expressed through action, through expectations met and obligations fulfilled. I followed her into the kitchen, where preparations for dinner were already underway. "Wash your hands," she instructed, pointing to the sink. "Then chop vegetables for the stir-fry." I complied without question, finding comfort in the familiar routine. This was how all family gatherings at Grandma's began, with work, with contribution, with each person playing their assigned role in creating the shared meal. "Your parents have agreed to repay your education money," she stated as I began slicing bell peppers. "Yes," I confirmed. "We're signing the agreement tomorrow." She nodded, pleased. "Good. They needed to learn this lesson." I glanced at her, curious. What lesson? That promises matter, that all children deserve equal consideration. She measured rice into the rice cooker with practiced precision. "Your grandfather and I came to this country with nothing, Alexandra. Everything we built for our family, for Richard and for Nathan, equally. Not one favored over the other." It was the most direct criticism of my parents I'd ever heard from her. Grandma Lynn typically kept her opinions on family matters private, preferring to influence through subtle guidance rather than open censure. "They thought you wouldn't fight back," she continued, surprising me further. "Because you never have before. They mistook your respect for weakness." "I didn't want to fight," I admitted. "I just wanted what was promised to me. Sometimes fighting is necessary to maintain balance and justice." She gestured to the IEI cleaver she used for cutting meat. "A blade that is never used grows dull. A person who never stands up for themselves is taken advantage of." We worked in companionable silence for a while, the kitchen filling with the aromatic scents of ginger, garlic, and sesame oil. It was Grandma who eventually broke the silence again. "Your sister is changing too," she observed. "She called me yesterday, said she is transferring schools, making her own decisions now." "She surprised me," I acknowledged. "I never expected her to stand up to Mom and Dad like that." "Olivia was shaped by their expectations, just as you were." Grandma's hands moved deftly as she marinated chicken for the stir-fry. "They expected you to be strong, so you became strong. They expected her to be weak, so she became weak. Until now." I considered this perspective, seeing the truth in it. How much of who Olivia and I had become was simply fulfilling the roles assigned to us from childhood. "Do you think we can ever have a normal family relationship after all this?" I asked, voicing the question that had been troubling me. Grandma looked at me directly, her dark eyes sharp and clear. "Define normal, Alexandra. If normal means returning to the way things were, you accepting less than you deserve, your parents favoring Olivia, everyone pretending this is acceptable, then no, and you should not want that." She set down her knife, giving me her full attention. "But if normal means a family where promises are kept, where all members are valued equally, where wrongs are acknowledged and corrected, then yes, this is possible. But only because you forced this change." The doorbell rang, interrupting our conversation. Grandma glanced at the clock on the wall. "That will be Nathan. Always early, that one." Indeed, Uncle Nathan entered the kitchen moments later, bringing with him his characteristic energy and warmth. He embraced me tightly, then presented Grandma with a box of her favorite almond cookies from the Chinese bakery in Portland. "Alex," he said, studying my face, "how are you holding up?" "I'm okay," I assured him. "Better now that there's an agreement in place." "I knew you'd get through to Richard eventually," he said, pride evident in his voice. "Though I didn't expect it to require quite so much legal firepower." He winked at me. "Your father was always stubborn, had to learn everything the hard way." "Like father, like daughter, perhaps," Grandma commented dryly, eliciting a laugh from both of us. "Where's Amy?" I asked, referring to Uncle Nathan's wife. "Book club," he explained. "She'll join us later. Figured I'd come early to catch up before the main event." He rolled up his sleeves. "Put me to work, Mother." "What? Needs doing?" Grandma immediately assigned him to setting the table, and conversation flowed easily as we continued preparations. It felt normal, comforting. This part of family at least remained unchanged. The doorbell rang again at 3:45. From the kitchen, I heard multiple voices in the entryway, my parents and Olivia arriving together. My stomach tightened with sudden anxiety. Uncle Nathan squeezed my shoulder reassuringly. "Deep breath," he murmured. "You've got this." Olivia entered the kitchen first, immediately rushing to hug me. "Alex, I've missed you." I returned her embrace, surprised by the genuine warmth in it. "Missed you too. How was the flight?" Fine, she waved dismissively. "Tell me everything. How are you feeling about tomorrow? About the agreement? About—" "Olivia," Grandma interrupted firmly. "Questions later. Work now. Wash lettuce for the salad." Olivia grinned, not at all offended by our grandmother's directness. "Yes, Grandma." She squeezed my hand once more before moving to the sink. My parents entered more hesitantly, hovering at the kitchen threshold as if unsure of their welcome. My father nodded stiffly in my direction. "Alexandra." "Dad," I replied, equally formal. My mother looked between us, her expression pained. "Alex, honey." "Diana," Grandma interrupted. "The dumplings need folding. Richard, bring in more chairs from the garage." The familiar commands cut through the tension, giving everyone a task, a purpose, a way to interact without directly addressing the elephant in the room. As always, Grandma understood exactly what was needed. For the next hour, we moved around, each other in the kitchen and dining room, a carefully choreographed dance of family members with their assigned tasks. Words were exchanged, but only those necessary for the work at hand. Pass the soy sauce? Is the rice done yet? Where do the serving spoons go? By the time we all sat down to dinner, some of the initial awkwardness had dissipated, replaced by the comfortable routine of a family meal. Grandma took her place at the head of the table, surveying her domain with satisfaction. "Before we eat," she announced, "I have something to say." We all fell silent, attention focused on the family matriarch. "This family has passed through a difficult time," she stated matter-of-factly. "Mistakes were made, trust was broken, but now steps are being taken to restore balance and honor promises." She looked directly at my parents. "Richard, Diana, you have begun to make amends. This is good. But remember that money alone does not heal wounds. True reconciliation requires acknowledgement, apology, and changed behavior." My father shifted uncomfortably in his seat but remained silent. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. Grandma turned to me. "Alexandra, you have stood up for yourself with courage and dignity. I am proud of you. But remember that holding on to anger after justice has been achieved serves no purpose. When amends are sincerely made, forgiveness becomes possible." Finally, she addressed Olivia. "And you, youngest granddaughter, have shown unexpected strength and principle. Your willingness to sacrifice for what is right shows true character." She picked up her chopsticks, signaling the end of her speech. "Now, we eat as a family." The meal proceeded with cautious conversation, neutral topics like the weather, Uncle Nathan's recent fishing trip, Grandma's garden plans for spring. No one mentioned Stanford or transfers or payment agreements. It was an unspoken truce, a temporary setting aside of grievances to remember what family meant beyond the recent conflict. As we cleared the dishes after the meal, my father approached me in the kitchen, helping load the dishwasher in uncharacteristic domesticity. "Alexandra," he began, his voice low, "I want you to know, the agreement, it's not just about the legal obligation. Your mother and I recognize that we handled this poorly." It wasn't quite an apology, but from my father it was significant, an admission of wrongdoing I'd rarely heard from him before. "Thank you for saying that," I replied, carefully neutral. He handed me another plate, not meeting my eyes. "When you were born, I had such plans for you. You were so capable, even as a small child, so self-sufficient. I think perhaps I came to take that capability for granted." "You did," I confirmed, not accusingly, but stating a simple fact. He nodded, accepting the assessment. "It was wrong to repurpose your fund without discussing it with you. Whatever our reasoning, we should have involved you in the decision." "Yes, you should have." We worked in silence for a moment, the clatter of dishes filling the gap in conversation. "Will you be able to start your graduate program as planned?" he asked finally. "I've deferred for a year," I explained. "But the department has offered me some funding options. An assistantship, possibly a scholarship. Combined with the initial payment from our agreement, I should be able to start next fall." Pride flickered briefly across his face. "You've always been resourceful." "I had to be," I said simply. He flinched slightly at that, but didn't deny it. "The first payment will be in your account tomorrow, after we sign the paperwork. We've already initiated the transfer from the home equity line." "Thank you." We finished loading the dishwasher without further conversation. An uneasy peace established between us. Not forgiveness, not yet. That would take time and more than just financial restitution. But a beginning, perhaps. A recognition that our relationship had changed fundamentally and would need to be rebuilt on new terms. In the living room, I found Olivia and my mother deep in conversation, their voices too low to overhear. When they saw me, they fell silent, exchanging a look I couldn't quite interpret. "Alex," Olivia said, patting the sofa beside her. "Come, sit with us." Mom was just telling me about some funding options for UO next semester. I joined them, surprised. You've decided on University of Oregon? Olivia nodded. It makes the most sense financially. Their business program is solid, and with in-state tuition and my existing scholarships, it's actually affordable without taking from your future. My mother smoothed her skirt, her hands betraying her nervousness. I've been researching apartments near campus. There are some nice options that won't require. She hesitated. Such a significant financial commitment. It was strange to hear my mother talking about budget-conscious options for Olivia. Throughout our childhood, no expense had ever been spared for my sister's comfort or desires. That sounds sensible, I said, unsure how else to respond. My mother nodded, then took a deep breath. Alex, I know this doesn't change what happened, but I want you to know I'm sorry. We should have talked to you before making any decisions about your fund. Unlike my father's careful admission of poor handling, this was an actual apology, straightforward and without qualifications. Thank you, I said, genuinely appreciative of her directness. That means a lot. Olivia reached for both our hands, creating a physical connection between the three of us. I think we all have a chance to start fresh here, to build something better than what we had before. Her optimism was so characteristic, so essentially Olivia, that it made me smile despite myself. Maybe you're right, I conceded, but it will take time. We have time, my mother said softly. And we want to do better, Alex. Both of us. I looked at her, this woman who had always been more focused on appearances than substance, on Olivia's needs than mine, and saw something I'd rarely seen before. Genuine remorse and a desire to change. I want that too, I admitted. I never wanted to break the family. I just needed to be treated fairly. You deserved that all along, my mother acknowledged, tears welling in her eyes again. But these weren't the manipulative tears of our previous confrontations. These seemed real, the physical manifestation of genuine regret. From across the room, I caught Grandma Lynn watching us, a satisfied expression on her face. She gave me a small nod of approval before turning back to her conversation with Uncle Nathan. As the evening drew to a close, we gathered in the entryway for goodbyes. The awkwardness of our arrival had softened, though tension still lingered beneath the surface. These wounds would take more than one family dinner to heal completely. We'll see you tomorrow at the attorney's office, my father confirmed as they prepared to leave. I nodded. 10 a.m. Elaine's sending the final version of the agreement tonight. We'll be there, he promised. Then, hesitantly, he added, perhaps, afterward, we could have lunch. The four of us. I glanced at Olivia, who nodded encouragingly. Sure, I agreed. That would be nice. My mother moved as if to hug me, then stopped herself, uncertain of her welcome. I made the decision for her, stepping forward to offer a brief embrace. Her arms tightened around me, holding on a moment longer than necessary. Thank you for coming today, she whispered. It meant a lot to all of us. After they left, I stayed, behind to help Grandma with the final cleanup. Uncle Nathan and his wife had departed earlier, leaving just the two of us in the suddenly quiet house. You did well, Grandma said as we washed the last of the cooking pots. It is not easy to stand your ground while also opening the door to reconciliation. I learned from the best, I replied, bumping her shoulder gently with mine. She smiled, one of her rare full smiles that transformed her usually stern countenance. Balance has been restored, she said with satisfaction. Now the family can heal. Do you really think it's possible? I asked, after everything that's happened? Family is like a broken bone, she said, drying her hands on a kitchen towel. When it breaks, it can heal stronger than before, but only if it is properly set first. You have set the bone, Alexandra. Now healing can begin. As I drove home that night, I replayed the events of the past weeks in my mind. The shocking discovery, the careful gathering of evidence, the confrontations, and finally, today's tentative steps toward reconciliation. It had been the most difficult period of my life, challenging relationships I had always taken for granted, and forcing me to advocate for myself in ways I never had before. Tomorrow, we would sign the agreement, making official the resolution of our financial dispute. But the true work, rebuilding trust, establishing new boundaries, creating healthier family dynamics, was just beginning. My phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. "Today was a good start, right? Love you, sis." I smiled, typing back, "A good start. Love you too." It wasn't the end of the story, not by a long shot, but perhaps it was the beginning of a better chapter. One where all members of the family were valued equally, where promises were kept, where difficult truths could be spoken aloud rather than buried beneath layers of resentment and unmet expectations. And that, I decided as I pulled into my apartment complex, was worth fighting for. The attorney's office felt different this time. As I sat beside Elaine, watching my parents review the final agreement, the atmosphere lacked the crackling tension of our previous meetings. My father read each page methodically, occasionally conferring quietly with my mother before initiating in the designated spaces. My mother's hand trembled slightly as she added her signature beneath his, but her eyes were clear, resolved. When they finished, my father slid the document across the table toward me. "Your turn," he said simply. I signed my name on each page, the scratching of my pen unnaturally loud in the quiet room. With each signature, I felt a weight lifting, not disappearing entirely, but shifting, becoming more manageable. "Congratulations," Elaine said when I finished the final page. "We have an executed agreement." She made copies for everyone, the efficient whir of the copier providing background noise as we sat in awkward silence. When she returned, distributing the documents in neat folders, my father cleared his throat. "The initial payment has already been processed," he said, handing me a printed confirmation. "It should appear in your account by close of business today." "Thank you," I said, accepting the paper. "The monthly payments will be automated," he continued. "Set up as direct deposits, on the first of each month." I nodded, appreciating his attention to detail despite everything. My father had always been meticulous about financial matters, one of the reasons his deliberate reallocation of my fund had cut so deeply. Elaine gathered her materials. "Unless there are any questions about the agreement, I believe we're concluded here." My mother looked at me hopefully. "Are we still on for lunch?" "Yes," I confirmed. "I'd like that." Elaine squeezed my shoulder as we stood. "Call me if you need anything," she murmured. "Otherwise, I'll check in next month to confirm the first regular payment has been received." After she left, the three of us stood awkwardly in the conference room, the familiar family dynamic momentarily suspended in this unfamiliar context. "Olivia's meeting us at the restaurant," my mother said, filling the silence. "She's looking forward to it." "Shall we take one car?" my father suggested. No sense driving separately. The offer felt significant, a small gesture toward normalcy, toward family cohesion despite the legal document we'd just signed. "Sure," I agreed. "I can ride with you." The restaurant my parents had chosen was an upscale Thai place downtown, neutral territory rather than one of our regular family haunts. Olivia was already waiting when we arrived, scrolling through her phone at a corner table. "Hey!" she called, waving us over. "Just got the text from Mom. It's official?" I nodded as we took our seats. "All signed and executed." "And the money?" she asked, glancing between me and our parents. "First payment transferred," my father confirmed. "The rest will follow according to schedule." Olivia beamed. "Good. That's really good." She turned to me. "So what happens now? With your grad school plans?" As we ordered drinks and appetizers, I explained my deferral and the funding options I was exploring with the department. My parents listened attentively, my father occasionally, asking surprisingly thoughtful questions about the research assistantship and scholarship possibilities. "I'm impressed you arranged all this so quickly," he commented as our food arrived. "You've been very proactive." "I had to be," I said simply. My mother reached across the table, briefly touching my hand. "We should have discussed everything with you from the beginning. It was wrong to make decisions about your future without including you." "Yes, it was," I agreed, neither accusatory nor conciliatory, simply acknowledging the truth. "I'm transferring my application to UO next week," Olivia volunteered, changing the subject. "Mom's helping me look at apartments in Eugene." "The housing office sent some excellent options," my mother added, "much more reasonable than what we were looking at in Palo Alto." The conversation flowed more easily after that, focusing on practical matters, Olivia's transfer process, my research interests, even my father's recent work projects. We carefully avoided the deeper wounds still healing beneath this civilized veneer, but the effort felt mutual, a collective decision to move forward rather than dwell on recent pain. As we finished our meals, my father signaled for the check, automatically reaching for his wallet as he always had at family meals. "I never asked," I said suddenly. "How are you managing the payments? Financially, I mean." He paused, looking mildly surprised by the question. "We've restructured some investments, taken out a home equity line, as I mentioned. It's manageable." "And Stanford?" I pressed. "Are they refunding Olivia's tuition?" My parents exchanged glances. "Partially," my mother said. "There's a withdrawal fee and some non-refundable deposits." "About 30,000 down the drain," my father added with a grimace. "An expensive lesson." Olivia flinched slightly. "I'm sorry about that." "It's not your fault," my father assured her quickly. "The responsibility was ours." I watched this exchange with interest. My father had never been one to admit financial miscalculations so openly, particularly not ones of this magnitude. The change suggested a shift deeper than just compliance with our legal agreement. "Will this affect your retirement plans?" I asked, genuinely concerned despite everything. My father shook his head. "We'll need to adjust some timelines, perhaps work a few years longer than originally planned. But it's not catastrophic." He met my gaze directly. "We'll honor our commitment to you, Alexandra. You don't need to worry about that." "I believe you," I said, surprised to find I meant it. After lunch, we lingered on the sidewalk outside. The restaurant, the bright spring sunshine a stark contrast to the emotional cloudiness of recent weeks. "What are your plans now?" my mother asked. "Will you stay in Portland until grad school starts?" "For now," I confirmed. "My lease runs through August, and I'm picking up extra shifts at work to save more for next year." "If you need anything," she began. "I know," I interrupted gently. "Thank you." My father checked his watch. "We should get going if we're going to make that meeting with the retirement planner." More financial adjustments, I thought. Actions have consequences, a lesson my parents were experiencing firsthand now. Olivia hugged me tightly. "Call me tonight? I want to hear more about these research assistant positions." "I will," promised. My mother embraced me next, her hug tentative but heartfelt. "We love you, Alex. Never doubt that." My father hesitated, then extended his hand formally. I took it, but instead of the perfunctory handshake he intended, I pulled him into a brief, awkward hug. He stiffened momentarily, then relaxed, patting my back stiffly. "We'll talk soon," he said as we separated. I watched them walk away, my mother's arm linked through my father's, Olivia chattering animatedly beside them. My family. Flawed, complicated, but mine nonetheless. The past weeks had changed us all, revealing strengths and weaknesses, forcing confrontations long avoided, demanding growth from each of us. As I turned toward my car, my phone buzzed with a notification. The bank alert I'd set up. Deposit received, $35,000. Always you. I stared at the screen, the enormity of what had happened suddenly hitting me anew. I had stood up to my parents, the people who had shaped my entire existence, whose approval I had sought my entire life. And I had won. Not just the money, but something far more valuable. Recognition of my worth, my voice, my right to be treated with respect and fairness. The victory brought no jubilation, no sense of triumph over defeated opponents. Instead, I felt a quiet satisfaction, a solid certainty that I had done what was necessary, what was right. My phone rang. Elaine. "I see the transfer came through," she said when I answered. "Congratulations." "Thank you," I replied. "For everything." "Just doing my job," she demurred. Though I must say, family cases rarely resolve this efficiently. "I had good counsel," I acknowledged, "and family members who ultimately wanted to do the right thing, even if they needed some persuasion." "How was lunch?" she asked. "Better than expected," I admitted. "Not comfortable exactly, but peaceful. Like we're all trying." "That's often the best outcome in these situations," she observed. "Not perfect reconciliation, but mutual respect and effort." After we hung up, I drove to my favorite coffee shop, ordering a celebratory latte and finding a quiet corner table. I opened my laptop and drafted an email to the graduate program coordinator. "Dear Dr. Wilson, I'm pleased to inform you that my financial situation has been partially resolved, and I am now confident I can commit to joining the program this fall as originally planned rather than deferring for a year. I would still greatly appreciate discussing the research assistantship and scholarship opportunities you mentioned, as these would significantly enhance my ability to focus fully on my studies. Would you still be available for our scheduled Zoom meeting on Monday to discuss these options? Thank you for your patience and support during this complicated time. Best regards, Alexandra Chen." As I clicked send, I felt a surge of emotion, relief, pride, gratitude, and something like hope. The path forward wasn't perfect or seamless, but it was clear again, no longer obscured by betrayal and uncertainty. My phone buzzed with a text from Tyler. "Victory champagne tonight? My treat." I smiled, typing back, "Absolutely, but not to celebrate winning. To celebrate standing up for myself." "Even better," came his immediate response. 6 p.m. at Alicia's?" I confirmed our plans, then opened a new spreadsheet, reorganizing my financial projections now that the first payment had arrived and future payments were secured. With careful budgeting and the potential assistantship, I could actually begin my program this fall as originally planned, without accruing significant debt. My meticulous planning, the very trait my parents had taken for granted and somewhat exploited, had enabled me to navigate this crisis and emerge stronger. There was a certain poetic justice in that. As I worked, a new email notification appeared. Dr. Wilson confirming our Monday meeting and expressing enthusiasm about my decision not to defer. Then another text, this one from Grandma Lynn. "The agreement is signed?" "Yes," I replied. "First payment received." "Good," came her immediate response. "Justice matters. So does family. Both are possible together. Both are possible together." Her words captured exactly what I was feeling. That justice and family weren't mutually exclusive. That demanding fair treatment didn't mean rejecting the bonds that connected us. 3 weeks later, I received an official letter from the graduate program, offering me a half-tuition scholarship and a research assistantship that would cover most of my remaining expenses. Combined with my savings and the monthly payments from my parents, my graduate education was now secure without crippling debt. I called my parents immediately with the news, putting the call on speaker so I could talk to both of them. "That's wonderful, Alex," my mother exclaimed. "Dr. Wilson obviously recognizes your potential." "Very impressive," my father added, his voice carrying a note of genuine pride I hadn't heard directed at me in years, though not surprising, given your academic record. Thanks, I said. It means I can start this fall as originally planned. We're glad to hear it, my mother said. We never wanted your education to be delayed. I bit back the obvious response, that their actions had directly threatened that very education, choosing instead to focus on the present. The first monthly payment came through on schedule, I acknowledged. Thank you for that. Of course, my father replied. We'll honor every aspect of our agreement. The conversation continued briefly, touching on Olivia's successful transfer to University of Oregon and my mother's upcoming birthday dinner. Not quite normal family conversation, but moving in that direction. Careful, considered, with new boundaries slowly being established. That evening, I met Uncle Nathan for coffee. He'd been my steadfast supporter throughout the ordeal, and I wanted to share my good news with him in person. To Alexandra Chen, future PhD, he toasted, raising his coffee mug. I knew you'd land on your feet. With a lot of help, I acknowledged, including yours. I just nudged Richard in the right direction, he demurred. You did the hard part, standing your ground when every family dynamic was pushing you to back down. It changed everything, I admitted. Not just the money, but how I see myself in the family, how they see me. Sometimes systems need disruption to evolve, he observed. You forced a reckoning that was long overdue. I never wanted to be the one to do that, I confessed. I always thought I could just adapt, accept, keep the peace. At your own expense, he pointed out. That was never sustainable, Alex. Sooner or later, something was going to break. Better it was their illusion of control than your spirit. I nodded, appreciating his perspective. Olivia's different now, too. More independent, more thoughtful. I think in some ways she needed this as much as I did. Probably more, Nathan agreed. She was trapped in her role as the fragile one, the one who needed protection and special treatment. That's no way to prepare someone for the real world. We're actually talking more now than we ever have before, I told him. Real conversations, not just surface stuff. Good. He smiled. Family relationships should evolve as we grow. They should become deeper, more equal, more genuine. As spring turned to summer, those evolutionary changes continued throughout my family. Sunday dinners at Grandma Lynn's became regular again, but with subtle differences. My voice carried equal weight in family discussions. My parents consulted me about decisions that might affect me, rather than announcing them as fait accompli. Olivia and I developed a closer relationship, supporting each other's independence rather than remaining locked in our childhood roles. The second payment arrived on schedule, then the third. Each one represented not just financial restitution, but the ongoing commitment to a new family dynamic, one based on respect rather than assumptions, on equality rather than favoritism. In August, I began packing for my move to campus housing, sorting through possessions and deciding what to take for this next chapter of my life. My phone rang. Olivia. Hey, sis, she greeted me cheerfully. How's the packing going? Slowly, I admitted. I'm trying to downsize, but it's harder than expected. Want help? I could drive up Saturday. That would be great, actually, I said, genuinely appreciative. You've always been better at organizing than me. It's a date, then. She paused. Hey, Alex, I've been thinking about everything that happened. Oh? I prompted when she trailed off. I just wanted to say thank you. Not just for forgiving me for my part in it all, but for showing me what it looks like to stand up for yourself. I don't think I ever would have found my voice if you hadn't found yours first. Her words caught me by surprise, bringing unexpected tears to my eyes. That means a lot, Liv. I mean it. Dad called me yesterday about some investment account he wants to set up for me, and I actually asked questions, read the documents, made my own decision instead of just going along with whatever he suggested. Pride rang in her voice. That's because of you. After we hung up, I sat amidst my half-packed boxes, reflecting on the unexpected ripple effects of my stand for justice. In fighting for what was rightfully mine, I had inadvertently created space for Olivia to claim her independence too. In demanding respect from my parents, I had helped reshape our entire family system. The money mattered. Of course it did. It represented my future, my education, years of planning and promise. But the true value of what I'd fought for extended far beyond the 127,836 arcs. 42 now being steadily restored to me. I had gained something even more precious, a voice that was heard, boundaries that were respected, relationships that were evolving toward something healthier and more authentic. As I carefully wrapped a framed photo of our family, taken at Grandma Lynn's last Sunday dinner before my move, I realized that despite everything, despite the betrayal and the confrontation and the legal battle, I was grateful. Not for what my parents had done, but for what had emerged from the crisis. A stronger self, a clearer voice, a more honest family. The wound had healed, and as Grandma Lynn predicted, the bone had grown stronger at the break. My phone buzzed with a text from my father. Your mother and I would like to help with moving day next week. Would Saturday work? 5 months ago, this offer would have come as an instruction, an assumption. Now it came as a question, a request, a recognition of my autonomy. Saturday works, I replied. I'd appreciate the help. Another text appeared, this one from Grandma Lynn. Remember, Alexandra, justice obtained with dignity creates respect. You have earned yours. I smiled, tucking the phone away and returning to my packing. The future stretched before me. Graduate school, career opportunities, personal growth. But it no longer felt precarious or contingent on others' whims. I had secured it through my own actions, my own voice, my own strength. Some might say the price had been too high. The family conflict, the legal confrontation, the painful reconfiguring of long-standing dynamics. But as I prepared for this next chapter, I knew with absolute certainty, standing up for myself had been worth every difficult moment. In demanding justice, I had found not just restitution, but transformation, for myself and for my family. And that was the true resolution. Far more meaningful than any dollar amount could ever be. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.